Good afternoon. In today's class, I will be talking about few aspects of origin of life. It is a chapter in your evolutionary biology paper, and let's present the screen. Is the screen visible?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. So, the origin of life. Are we here by chance? Is it by fluke, or is there a genuine reason or scientific reason why we are here, or is it because of God, or what? So we will talk about the origin of life. So for life, diversity and unity, they are the unifying themes of life. Diversity means that you have so many different types of organisms, plants, animals, and among animals you have amphibians, you have vertebrates, invertebrates, chordates, non-chordates, reptiles, mammals. So there is a lot of diversity. Even among mammals you have different types of mammals. দেখো কে এসছে, দাঁড়াও এক সেকেন্ড. So among mammals you have different types of mammals, you have different types of plants, you have different types of, so there's a diversity, and beyond them there is an unity also in life. Unity is that they all you have got metabolic processes which are common. They all have DNA and or RNA, which has genetic material. They are made up of proteins. So there are lots of unifying features in life. You can see they all are born and they all die. So possibly philosophically speaking, the greatest proof of life is death. If that organism is living or non-living, if it dies, then it's of course living. So there are structurally diverse organisms. The structurally diverse organisms, they are functionally similar. So they look different, but they have got similar functional processes inside. So unity of organism among organisms is apparent in the integral processes of all life, growth and development, various types of energy procurement, reproduction, etc. So diversity and unity are their fundamental units of the theory of evolution. Evolution is the plausible explanation for the commonalities and variations that exist among organisms. So commonalities means similarities and variations means differences. So evolution explains why a particular process, say respiration, is conserved among all throughout the evolutionary change. Evolution also explains the variations. That is why along the evolutionary line you have so many changes. So there are different theories on the origin of life. So the basic enigma or puzzle is, how did life originate? How did life originate? Nothing is directly known about the origin of life. The answer to these questions are exceedingly complex and at best only tentative. So it's a very difficult to explain that how life originated. It's tentative, that it's possible that this happened like this. So the theories on the origin of life is still a matter of speculations, and there are several intelligent explanations which we have, which explains the origin of life, but still it is not absolutely certain. So the first is the one theory is the theory of special creation. It utilizes religion, mythology, and philosophy. So the origin of life must be, they say that the origin of life must be attributed to an agency outside nature called a creator, God. Support or acceptance mostly due to faith rather than experimental or scientific evidences. Supporters recently created a new discipline known as creation. Next is the interplanetary or cosmozoic origin of life. It was proposed that the universe started from a primeval fireball and had been expanding and cooling since its inception 10 to 20 billion years ago. Life originated from outer planets in the form of a resistant spore, and that was known as cosmozoa. Propelled by radiation pressure, they reached Earth and started the first form of life. The cosmozoic theory, it speculates that life arrived in Earth as bacterial spores, perhaps enclosed in a comet. The idea was proposed by Richter in 1865. The theory did not gain any support. It needs evidence for the existence of extraterrestrial life. We are still yet to find out life on other planets. The next theory is abiogenesis or spontaneous creation. This theory held for a long time, from 600 BC up to the second half of the 19th century. It was believed that life could arise spontaneously from non-living substances. Maggots arose from rotting flesh, for example. Living organisms originated in sea lime under the influence of factors in the environment, which is heat, air, sun. The origin of life is without any apparent cause. Thales gave the concept that oceanic water was the mother from which all living forms originated. Empedocles, life originated by itself from non-living matter, and imperfectly forms were replaced by perfect forms. Aristotle proposed that living forms are animated forms of non-living matters. Empedocles also had given a theory about that on genetics, that women gave rise to handsome men by watching beautiful statues. So and Aristotle gave the concept of vital forces. They operate constantly and improve the living world. They propose that the living forms are animated forms of non-living matters. So basically all are spontaneously. There is no concept of how life originated. But this theory, it held for long. Then came the biogenesis theory, which says that every living thing on earth is the offspring of other living things. Life comes from pre-existing life, and this is referred to as law of biogenesis, which asserts that modern organisms do not spontaneously arise in nature from non-living things. Working hypothesis: life arose from pre-existing life. Louis Pasteur was the first to prove this theory and propose that organisms that are not visible to the naked eye are present in the air. Anton van Leeuwenhoek, they believed that microorganisms arose from pre-existing organisms from the study of microscope. Francisco Redi opposed abiogenesis, proposed that life could arise only from pre-existing living things through experiments, rotting flesh. So Louis Pasteur's experiment was that he boiled a broth, which was closed broth. The broth is free of it was closed. The broth is free of microorganisms for a year. Then this curved neck is removed, and within a few days the broth is teeming with microorganisms. So demonstrated that fermentation is caused by the growth of microorganisms, and that the emergent growth of bacteria in nutrient broths is not due to spontaneous generation. Something came from outside when it is opened. Then Francisco Redi's experiment. He had a container with meat, and the container was open, and container with meat where the container was closed. Then within a few days he saw when the meat started to decay, all the maggots and flies started to grow only in the containers which were open. It suggested that life came from pre-existing life from outside. Maggots were not formed from rotting flesh. They came from outside and they infested that flesh. So these laid rest to the spontaneous theory of spontaneous creation. Then came the thing which we believe today, the natural or marine primeval soup. It proposed that life did not originate on the surface of the earth but deep beneath the sea in and around hydrothermal vents. In 1929, J.B.S. Haldane suggested that life was the result of UV radiation converting methane, ammonia and water into the first organic compounds in the early earth oceans. Along with Oparin, gave the concept of the hot dilute soup theory, or the chemical origin of life. So the Oparin-Haldane theory, physicochemical or coacervate droplet theory, it gave that first there was the formation of simple organic compounds. The primitive inorganic molecules of earth interacted and combined with one another to form simple organic compounds. These were in the form of simple sugars, fatty acids, glycerol, amino acids and nitrogen bases. So the primitive atmosphere of the earth was a reducing atmosphere. Currently it's oxidizing. That means in the primitive atmosphere hydrogen had the predominance. Now we have oxygen as the predominant, and you had water vapor, carbon monoxide, nitrogen, hydrogen, carbon dioxide. These are all reducing things. Then you had the primitive pool of oceans. There was lightning, UV radiation from the sun, and all these things, and these gases, they combine to form complex molecules like fatty acids, glucose, amino acids, purines, nucleotides and pyrimidines. So the availability of energy from volcanic eruptions and lightning allowed gases to form simple organic molecules. Then formation of complex organic compounds. So these simple sugars, they combine to form polysaccharides, either starch or cellulose, and fatty acids and glycerol molecules, which were formed from the reducing atmosphere in the hot dilute soup, they combine to form the lipids. Amino acids, they combine to form polypeptides and proteins. Purines and pyrimidines combined with simple sugars and phosphate to form nucleotides, which the nucleotides, they combine to form nucleic acids. So Harold Urey and Stanley Miller conducted an experiment simulating the primitive condition of Earth and discovered that a variety of amino acids were formed. So what they did was, in this chamber, this was the apparatus they set up in this chamber. There were electrodes which gave simulated lightning. There was methane, ammonia, hydrogen gas put inside, and something there, it was constantly supplied through another funnel. And then there was a condenser. Condenser means the water ran, cold water ran, so this hot gas which entered, they condensed and formed liquid, and this liquid was cooled, and then it came to this region, and the sample was taken, and here water was heated, and the water vapor also entered into this chamber, and samples were taken. Surprisingly, from methane, ammonia, hydrogen, you had amino acids being formed. So this was a direct proof of what Oparin and Haldane said in the hot dilute soup theory. Then molecular aggregates called coacervates were formed. So once these complex chemicals were formed, Oparin and Fox, Sidney Fox, they proposed that the complex organic molecules synthesized abiotically on the primitive earth formed large spherical aggregates as cluster of organic molecules bound by fatty acids and divide. They remain suspended as droplets in sea water. The coacervates had all the basic properties of living cells like metabolism, growth, etc. However, they lack the complexity of living cells like organelles. Thus, these particles with proteins as enzymes and ATP as sources of energy were the first structures at the margin of non-living and living. So, these fats and lipids, they aggregated and formed structures, these complex molecules, they aggregate like coacervates. These coacervates, they also divided and had certain had some ATP also inside. They did not have organelles. So these were the border of living and non-living. Sidney Fox, they found these microspheres on resins. On some resins, they under primitive conditions, they use these complex amino acids and all. They were heated. So we will talk about in another class on the short notes about microspheres and Sidney Fox's experiments. So the next thing was these complex they formed molecular aggregates called coacervates, the next step in the origin of life. And then the first primitive living cells were formed. So theories on the origin of life, again it's the basic enigma of life. How did life originate? Nothing is directly known about the origin of life. The answer to these questions are exceedingly complex and at best only tentative. Theories on the origin of life still a matter of speculations, and there were several theories. I just repeat it again once more. So geology, now let's go to another part on some of the evidences of evolution and on fossils. So the geology, this also is in your syllabus. Geology provides the most direct evidence for evolution. The earth is about 4.5 billion years old. The earliest known cells are found in 3.5 billion year old rocks. The earliest known eukaryotic cells date to 1.5 billion years. The earliest multicellular animals date to 650 million years. The earliest land animals date to about 450 million years. The earliest mammals date to about 230 million years. 65 million years ago, there was a mass extinction of many living things, and the human family tree diverged from other apes about 4.5 million years ago, just to have an idea of the time scale of different origins, time points in the history of life. So fossils found in the rocks, they have allowed paleontologists to track evolution of many organisms, and some of them in fine details. So what are fossils? Fossils are remains or traces of prehistoric life. They are preserved remains of animal, plants, or their parts. They can be of the entire organism or a part which got buried. It could be a mold or a cast. Chach. Footprints. They can be imprints on stones. Maybe the organism has disappeared, only the imprints has been left on the rocks. Those are fossils. So the fossils, they are the physical evidence of organisms from the past. They provide visible evidence that takes us back in time and shows organisms have changed. The fossil record provides incomplete information about history of life. Still incomplete. Very rarely you find evolution like evolution of horse, something so complete fossil evolution that you know the complete evolution of horse. Paleontologists, they are scientists who collect and study fossils. And over 99% of all the species that have lived on earth have become extinct. So where are all these fossils? The fossils open a window into the lives of organisms that existed long ago and provides information about the evolution of life billions of years ago. The strata of one location can often be correlated with strata at another location by the presence of index fossil. So in America, in the soil strata, stratification of soil, it can be similar to that in Africa. So at one time they were all together. Tectonic activities occurred. Index fossils, also known as guide fossil, indicator fossils or zone fossils, are fossils used to define and identify geologic periods or faunal stages. So index fossils, among them shelled animals called brachiopods, were extremely abundant in ancient seas. Their fossils are useful indicators of the relative age of rock strata in different locations. So they were found, these are, you can see, these are index fossils. So methods of fossilization: petrification, that turned into stones. This is due to formation of sedimentary rocks underwater. The soft water carries small rock particles to lakes and seas. This was the organism here. Then the sediment falls on top of it. It's buried inside. Gradually it decomposes and the remains may later be discovered and studied. So petrification, this is due to formation of sedimentary rocks underwater. The soft parts disappear, the hard parts preserved due to mineralization. Muscles and other soft organs, they get mineralized and form rocky fossils. I had seen a fossil of a dinosaur, Boropasaurus tagori. It's in the Indian Statistical Institute in Kolkata. Boropasaurus tagori. If you touch the bone, it's just nothing but it's a rock. It's like a stone now. You don't find it like a bone. It's a stone. It has mineralized and fossilized. When I was young in Bangalore, if you go to Lal Bagh in Bangalore, there is a fossil of a plant. It was a tree bark of a plant, millions and extinct plant. It's become totally stone. That was the impression which I got of a fossil. I thought it was something old wood or something left, but no, it was completely stone, petrified. Preservation of footprints. So this is a dinosaur footprint. Prints, if left undisturbed, hardened and formed rocky fossils. Such imprints can provide clues regarding the body form and characteristic of the extinct animal. Preservation in ice. Entire animal can get frozen and may be preserved. Body parts remain intact without chain. Example you have of is the woolly mammoth found in Siberia, an elephant which has got lots of wool on top of it, lots of fur on top of it. Then you have molds and casts. Fossilized molds are found in volcanic ashes. Several invertebrate fossils have been obtained as molds. They provide details about the exact physical features of the animal. So you can see this is the natural cast of shelled invertebrates. This is a natural mold of a trilobite. Trilobites are extinct. Fossil evidence of past life. Types of fossil, they can be petrified fossils. Cavities and pores are filled with precipitated mineral matters. Formed by replacement. Just hold on for just a second. So they are formed by replacement. Cell material is removed and replaced with mineral matter, mold. Their shell or other structure is buried and then dissolved by underground water. Cast, hollow space of a mold is filled with mineral matter. Eta cast. যেরকম মূর্তি টুর্তি বানায়. Fossil evidence of past life. হ্যালো, হ্যাঁ। So types of fossil carbonization. Organic matter becomes a thin residue of carbon. It leaves a impression, replica of the fossil surface preserved in fine grained sediments. Then preservation in amber. Hardened resin of ancient trees surrounds an organism. Indirect fossil evidences include trace. Ichnofossils, they can be maybe impressions made on the substrate by an organism. For example, burrows, footprints and feeding. These are footprints. Coprolites, fossil dung and stomach contents. They are excreta, fossilized. Gastroliths, stomach stones used to grind food by some extinct reptiles. You can find these stones. These are also indirect evidence. So dating fossils, rock layers form in order by age. The oldest on the bottom with more recent layers on the top. So the more below it's found, the more older is that fossil. So this is geological time scale. So again you can date the fossil by radioactive dating, carbon dating, C15 dating, carbon 14 dating. The half-life is measured. It's got a half-life of 5,500 years. So how you can measure by the amount of radioactivity. So important fossils. The Ediacaran fauna, they were the earlier members of the animal fossil records. You can find them. These animals were precursors of organisms with skeletons. Ichthyostega, underside of the skull. Ichthyostega skull construction. After constructing, you get this organism. So it was an interconnecting link between fishes and amphibians. Then Semauria, interconnected link between amphibians and reptiles. Hyracotherium, early ancestor of the horses. Dinosaurs. Archaeopteryx, ancestral for connecting link, ancestral form of birds. So these are some important fossils. You have the theropods, Allosaurus, Cynornis, the Velociraptor, Robin, Archaeopteryx. As you can see that they had light bones, three-toed foot, wishbone, down feathers, feathers with shafts, feathers with flight, arms and long. So you can find the robin is the modern bird. So there are important fossils like the Rhodocetus, an ancient whale, lived about 47 million years ago. Its distinct ankle bones point to a close evolutionary connection to the artiodactyls, or the deers and cows. They are the artiodactyls. So the ankle bone is has got a similarity. It's reconstituted. This was another important fossil, the Donatrix. It was an ancient whale that lived about 37 million years ago. So what are the evolutionary significance of fossils? This is the evolutionary significance of horse. Fossils tell us the full story of evolution. Fossil studies, they reveal the course of evolution. Through fossils, the origin and evolution of specific group of organism can be understood. For example, horse evolution. Fossils provide us clues regarding climatic conditions of various prehistoric periods. Fossils, the study of fossils simplifies phylogenetic discussions. Some fossils like woolly mammoth can provide vital clues regarding genetic makeup. So with this, I actually end my class today. So do you people have got any questions?
না স্যার
নেই? তাহলে ঠিক আছে, শেষ করি। আমি এটার নোটগুলো সব পাঠিয়ে দিয়েছি, এইগুলো স্লাইডসগুলো পাঠিয়ে দিয়েছি। হ্যাঁ, আস্তে আস্তে তোমাদের নোটস পাঠাবো, আমি বলে দেবো নেক্সট ক্লাস কবে হবে।
ওকে স্যার।
ওকে।